This is episode 123 of the Death to Tyrants podcast. Hey guys, let's take a minute to talk about one of our sponsors, and that is Lorenzotti Coffee. I love these guys, not just because they were our very first sponsor, but because, like I've said many times, their coffee is so damn good. If you guys like coffee that tastes the way coffee is actually supposed to taste, with natural flavors that come from the region and the roast of the beans rather than from artificial flavorings like some other brands use, well, then you'll love Lorenzotti Coffee. If you're a real coffee drinker like myself, you don't want these weird flavors in your coffee like key lime pie or blueberry muffin. You want strong, traditional flavors that actually come from the beans themselves, and that's exactly what you get with Lorenzotti Coffee. You can get Lorenzotti's signature Venetian blend. This stuff comes right from Italy, okay? You can do whole beans, medium fine grind, which that one's actually perfect to use in the French press like I prefer. It comes in these really cool, beautifully designed, resealable tins that ship to you hermetically sealed and keep the coffee very, very fresh. Guys, I cannot speak highly enough of Lorenzotti. They're lovers of liberty. They love this show. They support this show. So why not support them by getting yourself some damn good coffee? So go to lorenzotti.coffee. That is LORENZOTTI.coffee. Guess what? We got a promo code, and that, as you know, is DTTP for Death to Tyrants podcast. You'll get 10% off your order at checkout. Again, that's lorenzotti.coffee. Enter code DTTP at checkout. Let's get to the show.
The crushing weight of the tyrant's passage had left nothing unmarked.
You get split in fucking half, but I call him the hologram wrath. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again. You know this. This is the Death to Tyrants podcast. As always, I am your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, coming to you out of Austin, Texas. At the end of these episodes, I always tell you about the new, I've been recently telling you about the new website. Let me tell you at the beginning of the podcast, just in case you're one of those people that, right when the interview's done, you fast forward or you go to the next, I guess you would go to the next podcast, death2tyrantspodcast.com. We've got new t-shirts up there in the store section of the website. And who's the coolest person in the Liberty world? Well, it's Jeff Deist. And Jeff has a Death to Tyrants podcast t-shirt, and I know you want to be more like Jeff Deist. So go to that store and order you one. We've got several selections of sizes, I should say. Probably, I think, small up through XXL, and they're a little bit like those athletic fit tees. They're cool, man. Like I would have anything that wasn't cool as a product of this show. Back to this specific episode. My friend Donnie Gebert is back on the show. You guys remember him. He's been on multiple times before talking about his book in the past. It was The Null Hypothesis of Politics. Well, he's got a new book out, and that is called The Art of War 2020. We're going to get into the themes of the book. I'm going to pick his brain, of course, about parts of the book, and then we kind of relate it to some current topics and current events, and I ask him about all kinds of stuff. Donnie is always one to answer a question that you can throw at him from any which angle, and he's good at this stuff. I love having him on. He is a former U.S. Army intelligence sergeant, ammunition supply specialist, infantryman, and U.S. Navy electronics technician. He was medically discharged from the Army after 17 years of active service and lives with his 3 children right here in the Lone Star State. I'm glad to have him back on. My friend, Donnie Gebert, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hello, Buck. How's things?
Things are quite well, I got to admit. You've been on the show a few times, and speaking of things being well, I've got a flood of new listeners almost by the week, it seems. So for those who have not heard your story, talk about quickly here, who is Donnie Gebert and how have you become the guy we all know and love where you're at right now?
I did a 4-job, 2-service tour in the military. I finished as an intelligence analyst, got out, started running through my GI Bill money, trying to figure out my own life as well as what was going on around me, and ended up, instead of finding a job or, specializing in something, I just ended up writing books. The first one was how to automate a legislature, because that's obviously driving everyone nuts. And this book I wrote was based on the intelligent pushback from my first one. All the ignorant politics I didn't, but a lot of the really good questions I had, they were knowledge gaps where somebody didn't know how a Venn diagram works, or somebody didn't understand paradox, or somebody doesn't understand induction, deduction, abduction. So you just have, listen, this is weird for me, man. I'm a staff sergeant. I'm wandering around to universities talking to PhDs, and they're hanging on my every word. It's odd. So I just have to. So this is really the Art of War 2020 is, I put the regular Art of War as an appendix with some notes, but really I wrote 4 chapters on all of the stuff that the Art of War could not have gotten into in its time. I'm certain of that because almost none of what I wrote has anything to do with the original Art of War. And the Art of War is about process management and budgeting and competition. And I'm really more about becoming good at it because it's very, very easy to be bad at it. So kind of the Art of War 2020 is kind of like a manual of how to think your way through a problem so you don't have to spend your resources first, because your resources are human lives.
Real quick, you just touched upon it. And for those listeners going, the original Art of War, talk about that real quick and how influential it's been over the centuries and why.
Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War, man, I want to say it was 2,500 years ago, something like that. Long time, 2,500, 4,000, it's a long time. Either way, while it was obviously written in medieval times where, the best way to put it is medieval. The technology was sword cavalry, not even trebuchet kind of warfare, just basic sword cavalry and spies and, politics and understanding if we're going to go to war, what is our minimum viable product? And should our enemy be competent, how are we going to flex around them and get it done anyway? Businessmen have used the Art of War for a long time because the abstract principles of competition that are laid out in the Art of War apply to every game you're ever going to play. And when I say a game, every system is a game. You can play the Postal Service like Ted Kaczynski. You can play the Ryder Truck Company like Timothy McVeigh. I just rent a truck and blow it up on you. And then I go to prison and you're screwed out of a truck, It's not about how, it is about how, and it's never about why. It's not philosophy, it's process management. So there's lots of people who think they can argue with the nature of a problem, and that's when you become a real philosopher.
So when someone hears that the title is The Art of War 2020, to be clear, you're not specifically talking war as people would know it colloquially.
Well, if you were to read The Art of War today, it would not be war, right, as people do it colloquially. So when you start really understanding this, I will just say that psychological warfare is what we're all kind of in the middle. COVID-19 is a psychological warfare weapon of mass destruction. I don't care who says otherwise. And you have to be able to sort out your enterprise environment factors, and you have to know what they are. And any state of ignorance, hallucination, deception, or belief. So your body can be having a hallucination, therefore you didn't perceive correctly, therefore your actions are incorrect. You were ignorant of the whole thing. You are incorrect. Someone deceived you. You are incorrect. Or you decided to believe yourself off a cliff. But any state that gets you from performing your task is fundamentally a type of psychological warfare. And the more inside of your head it gets, the more it becomes pure psychological and not even something where you could see and fix the problem because it's not apparent. It's in your own head.
Yeah, and you get into, early on in the book, the workings of the mind, basically. A line that immediately jumped out to me was, the mirror is the biggest hurdle. Why is that, and how would you overcome it?
I've seen too many people screw themselves. It doesn't matter why. It's completely irrelevant. All 4 states that I told you before, people ending up in a bad way because of that. So I learned from their mistakes. I have ended up in all of those mistakes myself. So at a certain point, you can start gleaning out ways I'm not going to screw this up again. And then you can start seeing a pattern emerge. And that is, belief is the vehicle of failure. Belief is for after death. Everything between now and your death is a measurement. It's a measurement and a calorie budget. And you're going to have to get up off your ass and go do it. And if you don't go and do it, it won't get done. Or you're hoping someone else is going to get done, and hope is not a method.
Well, within the book, and actually just in conversations that I've had with you offline, but in the book you bring up Rube Goldberg, and there's a section called Rube Goldberg versus the Socratic method. In layman's terms, what is the Rube Goldberg machine? And then can you explain the importance of the Socratic method?
A Rube Goldberg machine is one of those things you'll see set up in a gymnasium. When they do it with dominoes, it's just a big domino train. But when they do it with dominoes and a light bulb and a spatula and a battery and a wind chime and all of the things where you get that machine to just do 84 things, and then it'll do one innocuous thing at the end. And the more innocuous the thing at the end, the more hilarious it is. And the whole engineering of a Rube Goldberg machine just demonstrates that even though you don't think any of this is going to work by looking at it, once it gets in motion and you realize that it's a pre-planned sequence of events and it's engineered that way, then lo and behold, it'll work. But any incompetence, any of those 4 states in any of that machine will not allow it to complete. The end. That's how it works. So it works or it doesn't. And it's not that there's only one way to do a Rube Goldberg machine, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So you have to, be honest enough to say my methods are bad and I have to fix them. As far as Socratic method is asking a question to help dial yourself in. Instead of giving someone answers, you ask them a question, and when they have to think about that question, it should lead them to the answer they're looking for. Well, some people don't understand Socratic method because, a lot of people feel pressure when they're asked questions. So if you're a lazy shit and you don't do anything with your life, by the time you're 30, somebody will ask you a question and you'll be saying stuff like, I don't know that shit, just to make excuses for your ignorance. If you're paying attention, after a while, you'll be, you're the guy who's good at trivia night. People want you to show up for beer and wings. Otherwise, we might not get free beer and wings. So you kind of have to work at just understanding the things that are around you so you don't damage your person, damage other stuff around you. Nobody really likes setbacks through their own incompetence. Well, the harder your profession, the more that game gets higher and higher, the more likely you are to lose a hand in your profession. Now the game it's not a game. And here's where I like to use the word toxically competitive. When your fingers are at stake, the game will then become, air quotes, toxically competitive because there's fingers at stake. So now it's, no, Jimmy, you're an idiot. Go over there while we keep our hands and do this over here. And you really have to understand all of the processes of, I know why I'm here. I know how to do this. I know how to set up my Rube Goldberg machine. And you have to know all of that. Otherwise, your day just sucks. That's it.
Another quote I liked is, any philosophy that cannot measurably take place in 3-dimensional space is objectively false. Talk about that.
That applies to everything. If you have a philosophy that's, let's pick on Marx. He's always fun.
Yeah.
If you think you understand the Rube Goldberg machine of humanity, as Karl Marx does, you will suddenly be judging things as if you know how to judge. And you'll be wagging fingers as if you know anything about the enterprise. And lo and behold, you don't know how it actually works. And when you don't know how it works, you can't just write a book on how well you know how it works. You can't just judge other people's actions as insufficient in your eyes. Therefore, socialism. Therefore, seize the means. If you have to seize the means of reproduction, you don't know how to procure them for yourself. And when you don't know how to procure them for yourself, about 40 years later, you'll run them into the ground because that magic money machine isn't magic. But that's how the Soviet Union went. Propagandized, we're going to take our philosophy, we're going to put it in motion, and we will grease the wheel with human blood. Okay, if you're going to do that, that's how it works. Capitalism doesn't kill people on the short end. Now, you can buy bombs and launch them, but you have to understand that's a net expenditure. It's costing someone to go to war. It always costs to go to war. But the socialist machine, it's at war with itself from day one because it's a believing machine. It's not an actual Rube Goldberg machine. It's set up on philosophy. It's not set up on enterprise environment factors that aren't going to fail. So,
why is culture so important? And then talk about the need to recognize the ability of bad actors to manipulate it, because I think we're seeing a lot of that.
I like to say, fuck the culture, be the mold. Okay? If everything around you is shaping how you're going to do your day, you are really just trying to do the dance for other people. So if you want to engage in the culture, you're going to be like the stuff you see on TV. I don't want to be like that. So I would say that what everyone is calling the culture war is a nice mixture of Operation Mockingbird and the kind of ignorance that a government school will never wash off. You have to do it yourself. So that's where we're at, where you've got this, just to break it down into its machine parts. We live in you could call it a constitutional democracy all you want, but it's a democracy. So because it's a democracy, everyone's going to get a vote. If everyone gets a vote, we're certain that all of the incompetent people have been invited. Mm-hmm. We're also certain that not all of the competent people are going to show up. And we can ask ourselves why about that later, but you need to understand the vehicle of success is never let's poll the crowd and see what's the wisest thing to do. No, we need a subject matter expert based on our enterprise environment factors, and we're going to go do stuff because we only have so much money for this before it stops. And if we're going to continue to pretend that government school is how all this works, then it doesn't matter. I'm almost certain Donald Trump's magic money machine is also dying, because the reason I say the CIA never saw the wall coming down is because the fundamentals of how the American government and the Soviet government were working at the time were so similar that it's kind of like this baseline bias. Oh, we're in an arms race with the Reds. Well, no, the Reds ran out of productivity 4 years ago and they've been fudging the numbers. But the CIA doesn't even know that at the time, because they thought, I want to say all the honest socialist economists died 2 or 3 years after the wall came down, and they did the forensic analysis of that and said, oh, no point in being a socialist anymore. Math don't work out. And all the honest ones seem to have bailed way, way, way back when. So
one of my favorite things really to talk about with you, and it's in this book quite a bit, is psychological warfare, because we're bombarded with it right now. I'd like to hear you talk a little bit more about psychological warfare, its relevancy right now. You mentioned COVID, of course, but get even more detailed with that.
So assuming the premise, if anybody doesn't know what Operation Mockingbird is, you can go look it up. The CIA basically had a program running to say, we're trying to keep all of the Americans in the dark and everything they believe will be false. Okay. The problem with Operation Mockingbird is that if you have a sinister person in charge and they're really good at it, you get Operation Mockingbird. If you don't have an Operation Mockingbird and you have a mass media, you might end up with Mockingbird anyway. Mm-hmm. When you have this many people, that many TV stations, there's a phrase in the Army, the first report is never right. So you got so many reports, so many stations, so many people. We are primates. We are wired for sound. There's this example where they say if you have 1 million monkeys beating on typewriters, it takes them a billion years to ever type out John 3:16. Well, monkeys don't communicate with typewriters and paper. They scream at each other. So if they're going to scream back and forth to each other, they're going to learn John 3:16 a lot faster. It's ergonomic. It doesn't take as long. You don't have to learn how to type. You don't have to be good at it. You don't have to be accurate. You don't need paper. You don't run out of ribbon. You could just yell it across the room. So the psychological warfare aspect, you can try and blame the CIA, and they probably had a lot to do with it, but you can't really fundamentally run away from it in the electrified world. You just can't. So at that point, you need to become a professional intelligence analyst and a lawyer to maintain your liberty in America, because there are lots of agencies that will just poach it in your own ignorance. And then the governments start becoming that primary poacher, and you get what you get today. A lot of people are angry with how stuff is running, but they don't know how to do anything about it themselves other than judge that they're good enough, blame a target, and then go punch it. And that's not going to get it done, because if punching one person was going to get it done, do you really think that person would have got punched already? Mm-hmm. Like, really? We got 300 million people on the North American landmass. If we could find that one guy who was absolutely, the source of all the nonsense, they'd have already been done. It's not. It's macro organization. And then in a macro organization, you have two problems. Everybody doesn't know what's going on because they don't know how, and somebody knows enough about what's going on to turn it into fraud. So because of just the normal, like if you work at a job and there's 5,000 people in that job, you don't have to know everybody's job in the factory to know whether or not there's fraud going on, because it's a different task. But if everyone in the factory is bad at their job, the fraud is ignorance. And the company goes bankrupt because they couldn't produce fast enough. So if you target your competency problem, your sinister problem goes away almost by default, because competency will keep you from... Competency allows the process to be formed in a manner that doesn't allow the dumb people to be there very long. And it holds them accountable because natural consequences. If not accountability, financial accountability for their actions, just natural consequences where the only person they hurt is themselves.
Do you think this society is, let's say, too soft and too aloof over all of this stuff at this moment?
Well, I would like to, I'm certain somebody's that way, but I'm assuming a state of overwhelmed. I've seen a lot of people and I've seen a lot of faces, and I know what overwhelmed looks like. And you start talking to people about certain processes that are very important to them, and then they have to get a legislature involved. And as soon as that important life process to them involves that, you could just see the pain on them. Like, why are all these other people up in my shit? And the answer is a government school told you that it was okay. And then a bunch of years ago, nobody knew how to organize otherwise. So until you solve the organization problem, I tell all the libertarians, a violent authoritarian is always going to be in charge until you get your shit together. If you can't come up with a libertarian method that will solve whatever coordination problem the violent guy is solving, then that guy is solving a problem. And I'm not advocating for that. But if you look at the course of human history, the violent authoritarian who knows how, apex predator, going to do it. That's how it happens. So you have to innovate around them. And you have to make it so good that let me rephrase, it doesn't have to be good. You have to be able to look at your budget and say, if we can hem off this amount of violence and save that much money, this method is just better. So then I hate the moral arguments. I hate them because they're all open-ended and they all require people to believe and be nice. And I like this is an obvious coordination problem that's so poorly mismanaged that it needs to be fixed. Once we fix it, we'll see what the problem looks like again. But when a process is such a shit show that you can't really blame anyone, at a certain point, you just got to start from scratch and welcome to Earth.
Yeah. Talk about what you call the show, propaganda and whatnot. There's a great section in the book on that as well.
Everyone seems to have this coordinated understanding of what the government is supposed to do. And that coordinated understanding falls out of an 8th grade civics book. Well, when we go to engage in politics, do we really see what's coming out of that book? We don't. We are getting, a technical term will be balderdash. It's a sound and light show that is designed to overwhelm your senses to the point, sometimes to the point of exhaustion, like you would at a concert, where at a certain point, the lights are so bright and the music is so loud that you would be okay with those two. But the vibration of the song itself has now started to make you tired because it's that overwhelming at a concert. Well, when you can get a bunch of people into a stadium, you get a similar effect to the concert. At that point, we're already into the show. You're watching it's bread and circuses. These people are football fans in politics. They are not people who are trying to solve a coordination problem through a legislature. It's different. They are all behaving like angry like Philadelphia football fans. Jesus, I'm in Scranton right now. I'm from Pennsylvania, so I like Philly people because they will tell you no. However, sometimes they get drunk and they become the Philly football fans. So you need to know how to say no, but you need to lay off the bottle. And when you get into politics, everybody just shows up drunk.
This just popped in my head, and it's an experience that's happened in real life recently. But if you want to, and I realize that we've muddied the waters over time between left and right because there's so much gray area now and a lot of nuance and that can be had in that discussion. There is a saying, though, the left wants us dead. Do you see that at all?
So here's where I say the reason that we're all suffering, air quotes around that, suffering from nuance now is because Thank God, not all of humanity is dead, brain dead. Okay? This is set up to be right versus left. The show has convinced everyone that we are supposed to be right versus left. And all the gray and all the nuance are coming from people who are like, hey, wait, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So where I'm really seeing is that all the nuanced arguments are the ones that are even rationally close to enterprise environment factors, like Ron Paul makes. And then there's the Democrat and Republican, rah, my favorite team. Remember, all voters deserve hemlock. And if you have to watch left-right politics, you want all of them to drink. So when I say, does the left want us dead? I'm going to say that the left is comprised of primarily of nice people who don't know what's going on. And then there's a group of just nasty motherfuckers that'll kill you, but the right has that too. But the left has something that the right doesn't. Well, and I want to say primarily because there are certain places where you cannot be a pedophile. The adults around there will purge you from that group. They'll do it instantly. In Texas, some father caught a migrant worker raping his child, beat him to death on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
On the spot. There's no jury. There's no nothing. You cannot perform that act and get away with it ever. And you'd like a legal system to be that final, but it doesn't always work out that way. The left, it has people who are in charge of it. I also find the left to be a little bit naive, not shitty naive. They tend to come from more economic wealth. So they go to school and they kind of have this academic approach to both the world and humanity. So when you have an academic approach to the world, it's having an academic approach to engineering. It doesn't mean that you won't come up with something nice, but most of your stuff you're going to need some experience. When you put an academic approach to humanity, the first thing you do is you start off with your own bias. You're a human and you don't know what it's like to be outside of the species. So the academic approaches don't function so good. And when you get sinister people telling the academics that if we do it this way, it'll be academic grandiosity, then all the academics get on board because they're suckers. And then, you know, if their PhD and their grant money is riding on all this, you will see people do the dance. They'll do the dance for their own livelihood. And everybody has made some intelligent, pragmatic compromises. I didn't talk like this every day I was in the military because I couldn't get away with it. But I did it when I could. I did it when I could. And if somebody was outranking me and I had to use the command hand and point at the thing that was going to make someone's hand go away, then almost every time that ever happened, that person was like, oh, thanks. Yeah, we're not going to do that. So when you're surrounded by people who are just trying to perform the task, get along, high fives at the end of the day in Miller time, those people will not allow the left. They will not allow the cultural stuff that comes from the left. Academia is, I would say they're a little too permissive in what goes on with the human because the humans are animals. So when they become 9 to 12 to 15, some of them are rough to deal with. So you can't necessarily be always nice with them. But the left doesn't come from poor, broke. Most of the left doesn't come from broke. And most of humanity comes from broke. So again, the left is often this academic ivory tower that is fundamentally separated from all the other people because they grew up on I was accused by a black female of some kind of privilege. She was the daughter of a doctor. I am the son of a butcher. I had to shoot deer to have meat in my house. You know what I mean? So you got people who have been on, there are some people in America, Morgan Freeman was one of them, grew up on a dirt floor. Then there's these other people who have never not seen carpet. So the left primarily has this naivety facet, plus they have a fancy education that says, oh, we should try it all the ways. And then we end up with some real blind spots that hide real predators. Bill Clinton, Dennis Hastert, Jeffrey Epstein, the Duke of York. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Real predatory bullshit hiding behind this. Can any of the left figure out why Barack Obama has a Peace Prize when he was nominated for it 14 days into his war, which went on for 8 years? At which point I say, never mind the academic. There aren't any adults left. I make fun of professors. Well, I mean, not like Bob Murphy. Like, he knows what he's talking about. But I've seen academics show up. All of their education is on the wall. It's not in their head.
Mm-hmm. Hey guys, let me tell you about a sponsor for today's episode. That is Zippix Toothpicks. I am so happy to have these guys on board with this show. I love these toothpicks. All of my close friends can attest. I have them all the time. Remember when you were young and you would get those toothpicks with the cinnamon flavor? Well, these are like those, but way better. It's like the adult version because the flavors are much better and each toothpick has 2 milligrams of nicotine. So when you got that craving after dinner and you're out and about, don't be rude. Don't just leave the table and get up and go do your thing. Just use a Zippix toothpick. Then your breath will smell good. You'll have used the actual toothpick aspect of it, and you've satisfied your craving for a little nicotine. I use these throughout the day. I love these Zippix toothpicks. They got really good flavors. I personally love the peppermint watermelon the most, but they do have a wonderful clove flavor. They've got a great whiskey flavor, and these guys are a very small company that are willing to support a podcast like this one, and that should speak volumes to you guys. You know the industry they're going up against has a lot of powerful people funding it. These guys are just a small company. ZippixToothpicks.com. Of course, since you listen to this podcast and they're supporting me, you will get a discount. You'll get a 10% discount when you enter code DTTP at checkout. That is DTTP at checkout. Go to ZippixToothpicks.com, and I'm promising you guys, they are so good. It's going to be at ZIPPIX toothpicks.com. Enter code DTTP at checkout for 10% off your order. Let's get back to the show. One of the things I love hearing you talk about too is tone and the senses. You often use Bernie Sanders as an example, and it's done quite well. And that's also in the book too. Can you talk about that, the visuals and the tone and all of the things involved with propaganda?
Okay, so the breakdown is 7% of communication is the verbiage, my mouth. The next 38% is in my tone. Our conversation in America sings to each other. What we were taught of the Native American is that they would always speak in a low tone. So if they had an understanding way back when that if you talk to a stranger, it should sound like this so that dumb fucking mammal cannot misunderstand you, that might be a good social grace. It might be a good social practice, but we sing to each other. We put tone into everything. And what I really find is it's a lot of whining, a lot of childlike whining. But think of the children. Hear all that soccer mommy in my voice when I'm talking. But think of the children. I am thinking of the children. They'll all grow up dumb if they listen to soccer mommies. They have to go and engage in stuff. They have to get dirty. They're going to come in with bruises and scrapes, and we're going to patch them back up and send them back out. It's going to be fine. But when the whole goal is we're not going to cause a mess and we're not going to cause a ruckus and we're not, that's a little too loud and a little too dirty and a little too noisy. I don't know where those people think they live. This is Earth. Everything here is dirty, loud, and noisy unless your whole life was brought up on carpet. So at a certain point, you are susceptible to just the sound of my voice. The other 55% is pretty much everything else. You're taking in context how you're feeling that day, your ignorance or acumen at the subject. That other 55% comprises of everything else. If I can lock you down with some verbiage that you understand, it doesn't have to be genuine language. Uncle Bernie, he'll say all the kinds of fucking things. All night. 45 minutes. He wants everybody tired by the time he gets then you got to go do the thing for him, because if you don't do the thing, he won't be the guy. And that all of them are using teleprompters because they have someone go through these things, finding passive, gray, nondescript language. So none of these asshole politicians, you see, there's the tone in the voice that I'm being truthful, right? Asshole politician. It's a campaign promise. When a politician looks you in the face and says it's a campaign promise, at that point, I support whoever that is executing that politician on the spot. That servant lied for the purposes of its own wealth and its own grandeur. And frankly, I don't give a shit. If you're going to volunteer to be the head of an organization where several hundred people's livelihood or several thousand people's livelihood or several million people's livelihood hangs in the balance, and you proudly use dishonesty as a method, I don't care. Like, honestly, if somebody says they shot Chuck Schumer tomorrow, I might do some bullshit out in my yard with drinking and one for my homies and shit because I won't fucking care. Chuck Schumer's a problem. Same thing with Bill Gates. I don't know what Bill Gates has been up to for the last 25 years of his life. I can tell you that guy is in the middle of so many conflicts of interest that the Colonel Kurtz in me wants to kill like 4 people on Earth to see what shakes loose. Because when Colonel Kurtz took over, he only had to kill 4 people because he knew what the problem was. Now, granted, he was batshit crazy and out of his mind, so maybe the methodology he went to was unsound. The point is, when you know what the problem is and you rip it out, the violent authoritarian wins. So I don't have to have a liberty method. I have to have a method. And then I got to stuff as much liberty into it as I can. But if there are primates running around menacing the other primates, I have no problem with sticking them in a hole. Or preferably on an island. I in my first book, I get into the island. I don't care. These humans, physical removal. I like cannibal ethics. You send all the cannibals on an island. Self-serving problem, self-serving solution. So just working with these politicians, I just go back to politics is war by other means, and I'm better at war than pretty much everybody. So,
and war is deception.
Well, I learned this trick a long time ago. If you're pathologically honest, a lot of people will hate you, but you never have to remember anything. You get to learn and learn and learn and learn. I don't have to remember shit. I don't know what I was doing yesterday. Somebody asked me, I'll tell them I don't know. Whatever time frame they ask me that question in, if I can't give them the answer, I'll tell them I don't know. But based on how I get my answers, they're from enterprise environment factors, not my feelings. I didn't lie to you yesterday, and now I got to figure out what to tell you today.
Right.
I told you what was going on yesterday, and if you didn't see that, then it's still there today, or I fixed it, or I didn't. There's something obvious about the whole thing, and it's not. Nobody really questions my integrity. They question whether or not I give a shit about their beliefs, and the answer is no.
Are you familiar with critical race theory at all?
I am certain that, the first time I heard it was critical theory.
Yeah. And
now, when you say critical race theory, that's just a subset, right?
Right.
There's critical theory and there's critical thinking, and there's no critical thinking done in critical theory.
Yes.
That's all you need to know about it. That's all I swear to God, it is pure theory, someone else's bullshit. It starts with a bunch of nondescript language that doesn't even really accurately describe the enterprise environment factors, and then it just continues forever. So when someone says critical theory, I just remind them, you're going to have to point me at an enterprise environment factor, and I'm going to make that human being step out of their philosophy, point to the problem, and as soon as you see the problem, guess what? It's got nothing to do with race, ever. But I'll tell you, Buck, I'm going to go back to ignorance because I am not a bigot. I don't care what people's skin color is. I don't like the human race. They're all damn dirty apes. So technically, I'm a racist, but I'm not a bigot. And if you don't critically think your way through any of this, I don't know lots of people. I will not necessarily, I meet a stranger. They are not the same color as me. I don't care. Are they armed?
Right.
Are they threatening? Is there, you know what I mean? So when you look at the enterprise, none of this is relevant. And it's the only thing that's clogging up your television because Mockingbird.
Yeah.
The whole goal is for everything you to argue about is a lie. Here we go to the book, Concept of Zero.
Yeah.
A lot of the military people will have seen this before. It's called This Page Intentionally Left Blank.
Yes. Not in your book.
Okay. This page intentionally left blank is false.
Right.
Now you've seen it. You know what it looks like. It's burned into your head, and it's false. And it's right there. So I like to call what Uncle Bernie does an enchantment. He goes and sings you a song, and it gives you the melody that he wants you to have in your head, and you go away and you do what he wants when he's not looking. When it's done in print, I call it spelling because that's what it is. So now you kind of see how the neurolinguistic can be put into paper, which isn't a perception. All right, your eyes are perceiving, but you're not trying to mentally grasp what someone is saying and toning to you. You're looking in the language you speak, and the thing that you can't get out of is now burned in your eyes. It's false.
Talk about the warrior life and what that means to you.
Well, at a certain point, you're probably like when I was 18, I would have kind of said most of this. When it came to crime and punishment and all of that, I was pro death penalty, but only for good reasons. It's not we should have a gas chamber, and when the maintenance fees are getting a little too high on it because we don't use it enough, then we need to go rustle up some business like a governor can't. No, not like that. But a constitutionalist, a strict constitutionalist. Before I joined the military, I was probably a weird kid, but I just kept myself busy. So I had a lot of stuff to do beforehand. And a lot of the people that you're going to find in the military are, and some of them are out of the military, but you can call them warriors. They are active people. They never stop. They're always learning something new. They probably irritate the shit out of most of the people around them because they're either not a lot of people get pissed off when I don't help them with something because I'm doing something else. So if I'm doing something and they think it's a waste of my time and they want me to help them and I won't, they'll be giving me shit about it in your personal life. So at a certain point, everybody gets this family social pulled away from the thing you got to do, but you have to dedicate yourself to your own field of getting your stuff together. So I would say, the warrior life is really just adulting all the time, being on watch, doing the thing. And almost everybody quits, almost everybody taps out, and a bunch of them are in it for the college money. So you got to get all them things out of the way, and then there's just a couple of us left, and we have to figure out what to do with the college money kids. And that's kind of it. Like, it's not, I'd hate to say that it's like this really complicated life. It's a simpler kind of life that's more dangerous, and it's a really complicated mindset because if you screw it up once, you die. But I appreciate the mindset because it makes my life better. Yeah. So, at a certain point, it's discipline, but at another point, it's looking out for something that's not you. And discipline and looking out for things that aren't you both have benefits for you. Yeah. So you just kind of, you end up third in a list of three, but it doesn't work out that bad. I don't know.
I've heard that, I agree with this, but I've heard others say discipline to an extent equals more freedom for yourself. Have you found that to be true as well?
Yes, 100%. Like, the manner in which I think has been getting progressively more efficient. So when I say efficient, I just get to do more stuff in my day. Even if it's a nap, I get to do more stuff because I know how to do the other things I'm doing. I'm mentally ahead of my game. I have been accused of not being present, but I'm usually omnipresent. I'm here. I'm paying attention to you. When you have something to say, I got two other things going on in the background, and I've been like that since I was 5.
Right.
So at a certain point, there's a lot of people. I know someone who used to like to manipulate me with the sound of their voice and would be very angry when I wasn't present because it wouldn't work. So at a certain point, you're looking out for yourself, you're looking out for other people, and you're just keeping yourself busy. And there's lots of stuff to do, and you might as well learn something. I don't understand why people just sit on the couch and not learn anything for 8 years in a row.
Yeah.
Think about COVID for the last 9 months. If I don't care what your stance on it is, if you had all this free time in the last 9 months because a bunch of your favorite stuff wasn't open anymore and you didn't learn anything, you are the problem.
Yes.
In America.
Yes. Yeah. And to speak to that, a lot of these episodes, I'll say, well, I know this guy, but some of my crazier acquaintances give me so much ammunition for the podcast, but I know a person who's been wrong at every turn and will post all of these things on social media. He believed the Russiagate stuff. Trump and Putin were doing all this together to screw the righteous Queen Hillary. He's been for the lockdowns. He's saying COVID's the worst disaster handled by, all of this stuff. And he actually put out that for all of those people saying that during these lockdowns, you're a bad person if you don't exercise and work out and read books and learn stuff, screw you. You're just as good as anyone else if you sit and play video games the whole time. And he's lacks complete discipline altogether, and he's now trapped. I think he's trapped in a mental prison of his own making, and I think that speaks to exactly what you're saying.
He's wallowing in the mental diaper of his own making, and he likes it. He's a feces smearer. But let's defend video games for a minute. Video games if you're doing an hour a day of video games and it's not eating up your whole life, I got no problem with it.
Yeah,
that's as far. Games, strategy, puzzles, all of these kinds of things are just ways to figure out problems. And figuring out a problem is figuring out your own life.
Yeah, no doubt. It's just that combined with, and you don't have to read books and learn and work out and exercise and quote unquote be a better person like these jerks are saying. You're just as good as anyone that sits on the couch all day. And he was completely serious.
Yeah, but he's justifying in his own ignorance and saying, I can be that way. And the answer is yes, he can. But the problem is that people like this have been enabled by the system. Yes. The system is here for as much, like, you can look at a vote like a privilege, or you can look at it like it's a curse. Now, what if you look at it like it's a curse and then this guy gets to vote upon you?
Oh, yes.
Yes. So now this guy, he knows his vote is a weapon. And I find that these people need to be subjected to their own natural consequences. And that's all they really need. When there is no supposed government to call, when you do not have the hope that the vote is going to get it to you, whatever it is, you will probably get up off your ass and go find it on your own in the most efficient manner possible, because you probably can't afford to just go straight line and buy whatever you want.
Right.
So a lot of people I don't mind helping people out, but if they refuse to help themselves, they need to be fully abandoned, because they will get their shit together only as fast as it takes the second law of thermodynamics to push a primate into action. The end. They will figure that shit out Ricky Tick, because no one else showed up to help. But help is for people who are broken and need a hand, or they can't do it themselves and it requires two. If someone's trying to get you to do the basic maintenance of their life for them, fuck that human. Get it out of your life. And if it's family, even farther.
Yeah, well put. What would you like? I don't know. I know this is kind of a broad question, but generally, what would you like people to get out of this book, The Art of War 2020?
This was kind of for the people who didn't understand how to automate a legislature. Because what I noticed was a lot of the pieces of someone doesn't understand what I'm saying because there's this other concept that they haven't experienced yet. You know, you could say they're dumb, but there's a lot of people who can't afford. I've been around the planet. So I recognize that I've gone to so many places now, I try to find people where they're at. And usually where I find them is in their dirty diaper. So most people like their dirty diaper. But if someone is just honest, they might not have the skill set to understand different types of legislatures. They only know one. They've never sat down and thought about it beyond the one they were taught. And if you only know one side of the argument, you know a little of that. So that's usually where someone will just be bogged down by ignorance and they need a conceptual blast. Chapter 1 is Analyst 101, and it's Venn diagrams and induction, abduction, deduction, and paradox, and concept of zero, and monitor versus measure. Complete abstract concepts, but they're science concepts. So you're going to learn something if you don't know these things already, you're going to learn them. That's it. You're going to learn. I'd like to say it's probably a book about critical thinking, but I don't even think I used the term critical thinking the whole time.
Yeah, you do referencing critical theory, basically proving what it's not. But another thing I've been doing lately, and this is it's turned out, I kind of did it on a whim once, but when I've got deep thinkers like yourself, I like to get advice for everyone listening. Obviously, there's a lot of people anxious as hell. There's preppers going to work for bad times ahead. There's people predicting civil war, that it's going to go from cold to hot civil war. Some people are just wondering where they can find truth at all, if at all. Give my listeners some Donnie Gebert advice.
I do not think that the primates on the North American landmass are competent enough to have a civil war. Isolated shootings here and there, but a civil war? Well, that's competency in action. There's people who are motivated and, they're motivated, they're coordinated, and they are not taking no for an answer. Almost anything wearing a cloth mask will take a no for an answer, so you don't have to worry about all those. Then you got to stack competency on the rest of it so you can wipe out almost everything. You know what I mean? I don't worry too much about a civil war. I worry more about uncoordinated collapse of any particular thing. So I say it's better to restructure than it is to demolish, but I don't judge anyone for wanting. There are several police departments that need to be demolished, and the safest way to do that is defund the police. Guess what everyone will be told? Oh my God, they're all coming for all of your cops. No, No, they're not. It's the propaganda war. The safest way to deal with a corrupt police department is to take away their money. And you see what good ones come back the next day when they have to provide their own insurance policy because the city won't cover it anymore. And even then, they know that's their insurance policy is for $250,000. That's it. So whatever kind of damage you're going to do, you better not go far enough into offense that you can only do $250,000 of damage on defense. So go as far into the offense as you want, but at a certain point, it's not your insurance policy, it's your house. And if a cop is immune from losing his house for his behavior, I can almost guarantee that none of those things will ever straighten out. Not to a really good level. You'll get some Barney Fifes in there and Andy Griffiths, but you're really not going to get a Jocko Willink. And a Jocko Willink is what you need.
Right.
You don't need Andy Griffith works in Mayberry, and there ain't a lot of Mayberry left on earth. So you need a Jocko Willink walking around, and those things ain't cheap. You can't take some 18-year-old out of college and give them a semester worth of, in Pennsylvania, it's 90 days. We call it 301 or 302, something like that. It's a short course to become a cop. And then all of a sudden you're armed and you're here, put this on. You're special now. Oh, man, I couldn't figure a way to raise worse people. But the worst part of all of the bad cop thing is we're going to tell everyone that defund the police is the bad thing. No, it isn't. And anyone who thinks they know better, by all means, Buck will moderate that debate, and you're going to lose.
Does it seem like the term defund the police has been manipulated itself by certain actors in this?
I find it strange that they use that phrase.
So do I.
But, well, because everything they're describing behind defund the police is we're trying to terrorize the citizens of Mayberry.
Yes.
So there's a lot of pictures that are only, they keep showing like Chicago and Portland. Those are two places. I drove from Texas to Pennsylvania twice in the last 90 days. None of that shit's going on between here and there. So when all the TV people show you the nasty place and they start showing you the defund the police problem, I got news for you. The blanket problem across all of America, all the Mayberries, they need to defund their police. Not to make them, you're not trying to criminalize them. You're trying to see who the good ones are, and you're trying to see who's going to come back. When you defund the police department, who's going to come back? There's other police departments, they might not have enough money to exist. There's really rural places up on Oregon where, there's two guys on duty. They're on call 12-hour shifts. They don't work weekends because they've already worked a 50-hour week. You know what I mean? So when it comes to police are in the military, police are a QRF. You call these people to show up and help you. Well, in America, you call these people, they're supposed to show up to help you. Then they start looking for reasons to pinch you. Mm-hmm. No.
Right.
No. So so for all the conservatives who think they know anything about it, they don't. They get defund the police rubbed in their face, and they're all ignorant amateurs who don't understand physical security. They don't understand QRF, and they don't understand what the whole purpose of this organization is. It's not an opinion. Conservatives are stupid when it comes to cops. They don't understand because it doesn't often happen to them. They are conservative. They don't have money to go fucking off. They don't usually do it because they are conservative. They know they can't afford this kind of nonsense in their life. Many of them are just afraid of the cops. So they like to virtue signal. The left, they genuinely don't like the cops because they did call the cops to show up for help, and they did show up and bust them for a pipe. So then the football fan shit starts. Oh, well, you shouldn't have had a pipe. And all the conservatives like, shouldn't have it. At a certain point, I'm certain that everyone involved in politics is dumb because they've been taken. They've been had. They were given a vote and they thought it was like like they got a golden ticket. In reality, it's the albatross around their neck and they carry it proudly.
Well, where can my listeners find all of your stuff online? You've got this new book. You've got your old book. Plug away.
theartofwar2020.com. It's not another website. It's just a redirect to my page, and I put another page, and my book is available for download. I was going to put it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble again. Barnes & Noble, man, their whole publish a book thing, it will rip apart your... trying to reorganize that book on Barnes & Noble, I just stopped. I just stopped. It was ridiculous. Amazon is having real problems because they have functionally shut off all customer service, everything because of COVID.
Yeah.
So I am not bothering this time. It's available for PDF in one place and for a limited time only, because then someone will copy and paste it and send it to 3 of their friends. So it's a free PDF. Go pass it around to your friends. It's really more learning stuff. Learning how, do you like it when Bernie Sanders lies to you? Do you like it when Bill Clinton lies to you? I'm just good at making sure my politician doesn't bring me into it, except I'm an American and I'm in a system that brings me into it. So that's kind of how I end up figuring out why do I keep getting dragged into all of this ignorant nonsense stuff? And the answer is the system is set up to drag everyone's ignorance into the public sphere so that we can argue about it. Rather than do that, I would rather educate everyone right out of a hole, because I'm certain I'm better at defending myself from a politician than probably everyone. At this point, I think I get to say everyone, because I don't know anybody else who knows how to automate the legislature before me. So I'm so anti-politician that I will make their workplace a hostile work environment. So the goal of the first book is get rid of the legislature. The goal of the second book is get rid of the ignorance that'll get you a legislature in the first place.
Awesome. Well put, man. Well, thanks for coming back on. It's always good to chat with you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's get a beer.
How did you snag Tim Kennedy? That was quite a find.
Just reached out. He's here. I guess I don't know. It worked somehow, but that was good.
It really was good. He was on Rogan and then he was on your show.
Yeah. He's doing all the biggest Austin podcasts, you know.
Well, hey, we're going to have to get a group of drinkers and thinkers down there together for a bit.
Yes. Amen. I hope you guys enjoyed that chat with good old Donnie Gebert. And, I always say this during the sponsorship ads here. Go visit our sponsors. If you want to drink the official coffee of the Death to Tyrants podcast, go visit and buy some Lorenzotti coffee at their website. There's official coffees of other podcasts that have these crazy, ridiculous, fake flavors. Well, the official coffee of the Death to Tyrants podcast is all natural, wonderful, and it's a great thing to start your day off with. That's Lorenzotti coffee. Of course, Zippix toothpicks. I have those things throughout the day. I love those things. And what else? I talked about the website, death2tyrantspodcast.com. And one more thing. I've been getting a lot of new listeners, and we've been getting some awesome reviews. The last review someone left on iTunes, I almost teared up. It was so kind. So all of you guys, go subscribe on iTunes if that's the format that you use. Leave a rating and a review, because it helps get this podcast put out there more in whatever algorithm they use. And it's been working. So thank you guys who've done that. And to those of you that are going to do it, thank you in advance. As long as you say something nice, that is, of course. Anyway, I've talked enough. Go listen to the next podcast in line, whatever it may be. I will see you guys next week. Have a good one.
You get split in fucking half, but I call him the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Death to Tyrants podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.